Welcome back to Sleeping with History. As always, please subscribe and like the video and comment, as it does definitely help the channel. Now let's get into the daily lives of the Roman peasants. The day begins before water moves in the pipes, before carts roll through the streets, before markets open their stalls. A Roman peasant wakes before first light. In the countryside, the floor is packed earth, dry in the summer, cold and damp in the winter. Straw lies under thin blankets. Some homes use animal skins, others simple wool. The air smells of smoke, ash, and damp grain. There are no clocks. Time is controlled only by light and sound. The rooster's call is the first signal. Then the animals begin to shift. Goats, donkeys, chickens, and sheep. Most peasants didn't own land. They worked land owned by a local landlord or a wealthy citizen. Some were free laborers. Others were closer to bonded workers tied to the land, barely different from slaves, just technically free. In rural stretches outside Rome, Pompeii, or any provincial city, families lived in one-room structures made from mud brick, wood, and stone. The roof was often thatch or tile, if they were fortunate. During storms, roofs leaked. During winters, wind cut through the walls. The peasant rises slowly. There's no rush yet. Not because life is easy, but because energy must be saved. The body already aches, so does the back. The hands are cracked, and the joints stiff. In winter, survival depends on stretching warmth as long as possible. In summer, the goal is to start before the heat becomes unbearable. The family wakes in silence, not because they're calm, but because the sound wastes energy. The first task isn't farming, it's surviving the morning. A small fire is rekindled from coals kept overnight. The fuel is precious. Wood is scavenged from nearby land, sometimes illegally. Dried dung is often used when the wood is scarce. Water is taken from nearby wells or streams. No purification, no treatment. If the water is bad, illness follows, but there's no alternative. The breakfast is minimal, usually bread made from coarse grain, a small piece of cheese, olives, and sometimes watered down wine. Meat is rare. If eaten, it's usually during festivals or after an animal dies of old age. This is not life of choice, it's a life of necessity. Once the food is eaten, the work begins. For rural peasants, the land owns them. Fields stretch out, uneven, full of stones, weeds, and uneven soil. Unlike large estate farms with heavy slave labor, small peasant workers handled smaller patches, often rented from landowners or worked under agreements where they give most of their crop away. The tools are simple: wooden plows tipped with iron, hoes, sickles, hand baskets, and leather bags. Nothing is advanced, and everything is physical. Plowing requires strength. Either animals pull the blade, often ox, donkeys, or mules, or the farmer does it alone. The ground is hard. Rocks break the plow tips, and roots make it hard to plow through. Repairs are constant. There's no rest day, except during forced religious festivals or when illness stops the body. The crops are made mostly of wheat, barley, beans, lentils, olives, and grapes. Grain is the center of life. Without grain, everything collapses. The peasant sows, waters, weeds, and protects. Birds steal the seed, insects destroy the shoots. Bad rain ruins everything. Failure means hunger, and hunger means death. During harvest, entire families work. Children carry baskets. Elders sort grain. Women grind flour on stone wheels for hours each day. Grinding is torture on the arms. The stone turns again and again and again. The flour dust will fill the air and the lungs take it in. By midday, the body barely responds. Lunch is small. If they're lucky, they have lentil stew and bread. The day continues until the sun drops. There is no concept of overtime. Work ends only when the vision fades. Not every Roman peasant worked in open fields. Many lived inside or just outside major Roman cities. Life wasn't easier, just different. City peasants often lived in tall apartment-like blocks called insulae. These buildings were badly built, dangerously crowded, and often collapsed or burned. A single room might hold a family of 5, a shared cooking space, a few personal items, and straw for sleeping. There are no private toilets. Waste is thrown into the street drains or buckets dumped out the windows, and the smell never leaves. The streets are crowded from morning until night. Vendors shout, animals pull carts, slaves carrying water, sewage runs openly. The city peasant has work but no stability. Some work as dock laborers, street sellers, porters, construction workers, cleaners, bakers, bathhouse attendants, and public latrine workers. The pay is low, and job security is non-existent. If you're sick, you don't work, and if you don't work, you don't eat. There are grain distributions for Roman citizens called the annona, but they are limited, political, and unreliable. People stand in line for hours, sometimes all day, for a sack of grain that won't last the week. Crime is everywhere, with pickpockets, scams, and street violence. Peasants walk fast to avoid conflict. Roman law exists, but only for those who can afford it. Roman peasant life is family-based. There's no separation between personal life and labor. Women don't work inside, they work everywhere. They cook, clean, care for children, harvest, grind grain, weave cloth, and repair clothing. Most clothing is homemade from rough wool or flax. The colors are dull, brown, gray, and faded red. The children work early. By 5 or 6 years old, they carry water. By 8, they help in the fields or workshops, and by 10, they're considered useful labor. There is no education, no childhood in a modern sense. Play happens if time accidentally allows it, which it almost never does. And sickness is common, with fever, infections, wounds, and malnutrition. Many children don't survive past childhood. Death is normal, and it's not super dramatic. It's expected. Families grieve quietly and continue because they have to. Roman peasant food is basic and repetitive, and the grain is everything. From it comes bread, porridge, and thick stews. The vegetables they would eat include onions, leeks, cabbage, beans, and lentils. Olive oil is crucial, used for cooking, used for light, and used on skin. Wine is cheap and often weak, mixed with water because water alone is unsafe. And meat is rare, but when it's eaten, it's usually goat, chicken, some pork, and occasionally fish. Most meats are dull, no spices unless lucky, no sugar, no luxury. Hunger isn't dramatic, it's constant. Even when eating, people know it won't last. Religion controls daily rhythm. Peasants worship household spirits called lares and penates. Small shrines sit in corners of homes. They offer bread, wine, or small food portions. Temples dominate cities. Festivals provide small breaks from labor, but they're rare and often expected, not celebrated. Many peasants fear the gods. Drought, a punishment. Illness, a warning. Storm, divine anger. Priests control interpretation, and the poor obey. Later, as Christianity spreads, new beliefs enter, but life remains the same. The prayers change, but the work doesn't. When the sun drops, the energy disappears. Oil lamps are dim and expensive to maintain. Many go dark early to save oil. In the countryside, the animals are secured. In the city, the doors are barred with wood. Night is dangerous. Crime increases, and fires spread quickly. The poor sleep close to their shoes, close to their tools, and close to whatever little they own. There is no comfort, only temporary unconsciousness. Roman peasant life changes with the seasons. Spring brings plantation. Summer brings exhaustion. Autumn brings harvest, and winter brings hunger. If harvest fails, the starvation follows. Every year is uncertain. There's no storage security. Weather controls their fate. A wet season ruins crops, and a dry season kills animals. Peasants don't curse nature, they endure it. They don't expect fairness. Most Roman peasants are never remembered. They have no statues, no writings, and no names carved. They die in their beds, in the fields, in the streets, or from a slow illness. Their lives fuel the empire, their labor builds cities, and their grain feeds armies. Yet their names vanish. History stands on their backs, silent and uncredited. This is the daily life of a Roman peasant, not a life of honor, not a life of romance. A life of work, hunger, fatigue, and quiet persistence. No storybooks, no hero endings. Just survival inside the empire that needed them but never cared about them. Rome runs on taxes. Not paid by emperors, not paid by senators, paid by peasants. A Roman peasant wakes every year with the same fear. Will I owe more than I can afford? And taxes come in many forms. There's grain tax, land rent, market fees, road tolls, temple dues, harbor taxes, and sales tax. And they're collected by people who don't care if the peasants are struggling. The tax collectors can seize tools, animals, stored grain, furniture, and clothing. If a peasant can't pay rent on the land they work, the landlord has a legal right to evict them or take part of their harvest, and the debt is worse. Debt chains families for years. Debt can turn a free peasant into a bonded worker. Debt can make a child a servant. In rural villages, families fear bad harvests more than storms. Because storms can come and go, but tax collectors always arrive. Peasants do calculations in their head constantly. How much grain must go to the landlord? How much grain must be saved? How much must be sold? There's no room for error. If they fail, they lose everything, and no one in power will protect them. To elite Romans, freedom is everything. To peasants, the difference between free and slave can feel small. Free peasants technically have rights, but practically life makes those rights fragile. A slave is fed by their master, a free peasant must feed themselves. A slave has shelter provided, a peasant pays rent. A slave can't leave, a peasant might have no place to go. In cities, the labor market mixes them. Peasants and slaves work side by side, carrying stone, baking bread, loading ships, and hauling water. Some peasants envy slaves who have stable food, but slavery is brutal. The punishments are severe, and workloads are crushing. There's no future unless manumission is granted. And yet, every peasant knows that a single misfortune, a broken arm, a collapsed roof, a failed harvest can push them toward a life barely different. Freedom is not comfortable, it is fragile. Rome had laws, strict laws, detailed laws, endless laws, but the law favored the wealthy. A peasant caught stealing grain could be beaten, enslaved, or forced into hard labor. A wealthy merchant caught cheating taxes could negotiate. Punishments for the poor included public beatings, loss of property, forced labor, and fines they can't afford. Exile and being sold into bondage. For small crimes, peasants faced quick, harsh justice. For larger crimes committed by elites, the process is slow and political. In cities, watchmen patrol at night, but they don't protect the poor. They just monitor them. The peasant walks streets knowing if they are robbed, no one will help. If they are accused, no one will defend them. If they're hurt, no doctor will come. Roman justice is a system of hierarchy. Peasants live at the bottom. Not every moment is suffering, though. Rome offers rare pockets of relief. Festivals scatter throughout the year. Saturnalia, Ludi Romani, harvest celebrations, and local feast. And during the festivals, the work slows. Bread is distributed, wine flows, games are held, and markets overflow with visitors. For peasants, festivals are the only time they feel a part of Rome rather than beneath it. They watch the chariot race and the circus. They listen to street musicians. They eat sweet cakes if they can afford any, and they cheer for gladiators they'll never meet. Drinking becomes common during these days. Inexpensive wine, diluted but plentiful. Some drink to escape monotony, others drink to forget the pain. Laughters fill the streets, brief and bright. But when the festivals end and life returns to hunger and labor, that joy is temporary, but the work is permanent. Rome peasants fear sickness more than storms. Disease arrives suddenly, in ways such as fevers, parasites, boils, infections, malaria in the marshy regions, food poisoning, and contaminated water, and there is no modern medicine. Doctors exist, but for the wealthy households and soldiers. Peasants rely on herbal mixtures, garlic poultices, oil rubs, boiled roots, prayers to God, amulets against illness. Some believe in curses, some believe in evil spirits, and some think the gods are punishing them for their misdeeds. If a child becomes ill, families prepare for the worst. If a parent becomes ill, the household collapses. Losing a worker means losing income. Losing income means losing food, and losing food means everything else follows. Illness isn't an inconvenience, it's a threat to their survival. And every peasant lives with that knowledge. Peasants don't retire, they simply weaken. Old age is rare for laborers. Those who reach it are fragile. Their hands tremble and their backs ache permanently. Their sight is blurred and their teeth are worn or missing. In rural homes, elders are cared for as long as possible, but the food is limited and the care is difficult and work must continue. In cities, the elder often become beggars. Some sit alongside busy roads with a small bowl. Others wait at a temple entrances hoping for charity. Many sleep in abandoned doorways. There are no pensions, no state support. When they die, the burials are simple. Sometimes they share graves. Sometimes they lay in unmarked fields. And sometimes the body is placed in a ditch outside the walls. The empire does not mourn them, but their families do. Quiet, briefly, because the living must keep working. The Roman world admired power, conquest, wealth, and glory, but its foundation was built on the lives of peasants who had none of those things. They plowed all the soil, they carried the stones, they fed the cities, they built the roads, they hauled the grain, and they labored in silence. Peasants kept the empire alive, and the empire barely saw them. The days were long, the nights were uncertain, and the lives were short, but without them, the history collapses. This was their world, their struggle, and their survival. A forgotten life lived beneath the shadow of Rome. This has been Sleeping with History, where the past truly never rests, and neither do we.